ink halfway through Larry's signature. He didn't even pause. He looked up at the lawyer, held out his hand, and said, "Can I get another one?" Like he was signing a receipt at a restaurant. Like this was nothing. Like 6 years of marriage was a form he just needed to get through so he could move on to something better. The lawyer handed him a new pen without a word. He was a man who had seen a lot of divorces. He had never seen one that made him feel this personally offended. Larry finished signing, pressed the cap back onto the pen, set it down neatly. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, looked around the room at nobody in particular, and said, "I feel like I can breathe again." The lawyer looked at his desk. The paralegal looked at the wall. The plant in the corner was fake, and even it seemed uncomfortable. Nyla sat completely still across the table. Her hands were folded. Her face was neutral. She had spent 6 years perfecting that face, the one that gave nothing away, the one she wore when Larry forgot their anniversary, when he bought her a George Foreman grill for her birthday, when he told her she was too much in front of his friends at a cookout, and then laughed like it was a compliment. She wore that face now. She signed her own name, stood up, picked up her purse. "Have a good life, Larry," she said, and she walked out. She made it to her car before she stopped moving. She sat in the driver's seat and stared through the windshield at the parking garage wall. Gray concrete, a water stain shaped like nothing, a bumper sticker on the car ahead that said, "Honk if you love Jesus." She did not honk. She sat there for 6 minutes. She counted. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was something quieter than both of those things, something that didn't have a clean name. It was the feeling of finally stopping after running for so long that you forgot you were tired. She drove to Raising Cane's. She ordered the box combo, ate every piece in the parking lot, ordered another one. The girl at the window gave her a second order, and Nyla said, "I just got divorced." And the girl immediately said, "Extra sauce?" And, and Nyla said, "Please." He called Diamond. It rang once. "Talk to me." He said he could breathe, Diamond. Silence. Then, "Where is he right now?" "Do not." Nyla. "Bye. Where is?" "He, Larry, is not your problem. Larry has been my problem since 2019 when he showed up to your birthday dinner 20 minutes late with a gas station card. Where is he?" Nyla laughed, just once, small, but it was real. "Applebee's," Diamond said. "1 hour. I'm buying. You always say that and you never buy. Tonight I'm buying. Tonight is different. Tonight we are celebrating the beginning of the rest of your life, and I need you to get out of that parking lot before you order a third combo." Nyla looked down at the bag in her lap. "Nyla, I'm already driving," she said. She was not already driving. She ordered the third combo. She ate half. She felt only slightly bad about it. Then she started the car, pulled out of the lot, and drove toward whatever came next. She had no idea what that was. She had absolutely no idea. If you are new here, welcomes. This channel is home to stories that will make you laugh, make you feel, and make you come back for more. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a part. Drop a comment and let me know, are you Team Nyla from the jump? Because baby, this story is just getting started. 6 weeks after the divorce, Nyla was fine. She had decided this, firmly, out loud, to herself, in her bathroom mirror every morning before work. You are fine. You are moving. You are not thinking about it. She was thinking about it constantly. But the mirror didn't need to know that. Work helped. Work always helped. There was something about other people's problems, contracts, disputes, filing deadlines, that made her own life feel manageable by comparison. At least her problems didn't come with court dates. Most of them. She got to the office on a Tuesday, set down her coffee, and found a file sitting on her desk. No note, no explanation, just the file, placed there by someone who clearly did not want to be associated with it, because Gerald, her supervising attorney, a man whose entire personality was controlled panic, was already in his office with the blinds closed at 8:50 in the morning. Blinds he never closed. The man loved natural light. He talked about natural light the way other people talked about religion. Blinds closed meant something was wrong. Nyla opened the file. Private holdings company. Assets across 5 full pages. Real estate, logistics, international import contracts. Things she had to read twice to confirm she was reading correctly. The numbers were not normal numbers. They were the kind of numbers that made you put the paper down for a second and just sit with it. At the top of the intake form, One name, Sojun. Diamond was behind her before she finished reading it. Diamond worked 2 blocks away and had a habit of appearing in Nyla's office without warning, always under the cover of returning something, a book, a jacket, a Tupperware container she was never actually bringing back. Today it was a phone charger. Nobody questioned it anymore. She looked over Nyla's shoulder. She went very still. Nyla, he's a new client. Nyla, that man is not a client. His family runs import operations from New York down to Miami, and nobody asks where half of it comes from. 3 federal investigations. Nothing stuck. Not one charge. He walked into a government building in D.C. 18 months ago, and 2 senior agents put in transfer requests the following week. Nyla turned around slowly. How do you know all of that? YouTube, Diamond. There's a whole community, very informative, very thorough. Please go back to work. I'm just saying, be professional, be normal. Do not say anything strange. I am always professional. Diamond gave her a look that contained an entire history. You told the last difficult client his energy was giving 2007 villain. He was being difficult. He was a judge, Nyla. He was still being difficult. Diamond left. Nyla turned back to the file. She read it twice more, organized it, and told herself this was just another case, a complicated one, with complicated numbers and a client who apparently made federal agents rearrange their entire careers. But just a case. She was completely prepared. He arrived at 11 a.m. Brenda, the receptionist, had seen the name on the morning schedule at 9 a.m., and by 9:15 had remembered a dental appointment she had never scheduled and left the building. 2 near associates found urgent reasons to work from the far conference room. Gerald got coffee at 10:45 and did not return. Nyla was at the front desk because someone had to be. The door opened. He was tall, dark coat, no tie, the kind of man who dressed like he had nothing to prove because he genuinely didn't. He moved through the entrance without looking around, not because he was distracted, but because he had already assessed the room before he walked into it. That was clear in the way he moved. Unhurried. Certain. Like the space had already agreed to accommodate him before he arrived. He stopped at the desk. He looked at her. Not the way men sometimes looked at her, that quick scan, up and down, immediate conclusion. He looked at her the way someone looks at something they weren't expecting and aren't quite sure what to do with yet. Steady. Quiet. Like he was reading something that wasn't in a hurry to be read. Nyla held out a visitor badge. Sign in here. And stay away from the printer. It's going through something. He took the badge, looked at it, looked back at her. Going through something. It jams when it feels judged. Don't look at it directly and you'll both be fine. Something crossed his face. Fast. Gone before it fully arrived. He picked up the pen, signed the sheet in clean, deliberate strokes, and sat down in the chair across from the desk. He folded his hands. He waited. Nyla went back to her screen. She typed. She was absolutely not thinking about the way he had looked at her. She was thinking about it completely. Gerald finally emerged from his office at 11:07, shook Sojun's hand with both of his, laughed at nothing, and ushered him down the hall toward the conference room. Sojun stood, adjusted his coat, and followed. At the doorway he paused, turned back, looked at Nyla one more time. No words. Just that same quiet, unhurried attention, like he was marking something down somewhere internal and intended to come back to it. Then he was gone. Nyla sat very still. Then she picked up her phone and texted Diamond. He looked at me. Diamond responded in 2 seconds. How? Nyla stared at the screen, put the phone face down, picked it back up, like I was something worth looking at. Diamond did not respond with words. She sent 17 exclamation marks and a single fire emoji. Nyla put the phone away. She had a lot of work to do. She did not do any of it for the next 4 minutes. He came back on Thursday. Nyla knew because Brenda called in sick. Brenda had not been sick a single day in 4 years. She once came to work with a sprained ankle and a fever and said she was fine. But Thursday morning, 8:47 a.m., she called in sick. Nyla looked at the schedule. Sojun, 10 a.m., follow-up consultation. She put on a fresh pot of coffee, not the break room sludge. She had brought her French press from home that morning and told herself it was because she needed a better start to her day. She told herself that with full confidence. She almost respected herself for how well she sold it. He arrived at 9:58. 2 minutes early. She noticed. She did not acknowledge that she noticed. He was in a different coat today, charcoal instead of black. No tie again. There was something about the way he dressed that felt deliberate without being studied, like a man who had long ago decided what he was and stopped auditioning for other people's opinions of it. He stopped at the desk. Good morning. His voice was low. Not quiet. There was a difference. Quiet meant unsure. His voice was low the way a room is low lit on purpose. Controlled. Warm underneath the control if you listened past the surface. Nyla looked up from her screen. Morning. Gerald is running about 5 minutes behind. You can sit. I'll stand. Okay. She went back to her screen. He stayed at the desk. She could feel him not leaving the way you feel a shift in temperature. The printer, he said. She looked up. He nodded toward it. It's not doing anything. It's calm right now. Don't celebrate yet. Do you often have bad days? Mondays and Thursdays mostly? Today is Thursday. I know, we're all just hoping for the best. He looked at the printer, then back at her. Has it ever actually attacked anyone? Kevin from accounting lost 17 pages of a quarterly report in March. He cried. We don't talk about it. This time, the thing that crossed his face stayed long enough to be recognized. Not quite a smile, the architecture of one, the moment right before. I'm Sojun, he said. I know, you're in the system. You didn't tell me your name. She looked at him steadily. Nyla, he repeated it once, not out loud, just his mouth forming the shape of it, like he was placing it somewhere specific so it wouldn't get lost. Gerald appeared at the end of the hallway, slightly breathless, apologizing before he even reached them. Sojun turned, and just like that, the moment folded itself up and disappeared into the professional business of the day. The meeting ran long. Nyla knew because she could see the conference room from her desk, glass panels along the top half of the wall. Gerald talked too much with his hands when he was nervous. Today his hands were everywhere. Sojun sat across from him, composed, saying very little, which Nyla already understood was not the same as having very little to say. At 12:30, Gerald stepped out to take a call. Sojun came to the doorway of the conference room. Do you eat lunch? Nyla looked up. Everyone eats lunch? At your desk? Usually. He considered this like it was information that mildly concerned him. There's a place 2 blocks from here. The soup is good. You've been to Columbus before? Once. 3 years ago. And you remembered the soup. It was a very good soup. She looked at him for a moment. He looked back. No pressure in it. No performance. Just a man standing in a doorway asking a woman if she wanted soup and somehow making it feel like the most straightforward thing in the world when it was clearly not. I have 25 minutes, she said. That's enough. The place was small. 8 tables, a counter, a woman behind it who clearly ran everything and knew it. It smelled like something that had been cooking since early morning and had no intention of stopping. They sat across from each other at a table by the window. Sojun ordered without looking at the menu. Nyla looked at the menu for exactly 4 seconds and ordered the spicy version of whatever he got. He flagged the server without being asked and confirmed she wanted it actually spicy. The server nodded. Nyla raised an eyebrow. You didn't have to do that, she said. You said it was spicy. Some places water it down for new customers. And you knew that. I pay attention. She studied him across the table. In the office, he was contained, measured, the kind of presence that filled a room without trying to. Here he was the same, but somehow closer, like a volume that had been turned up by one small notch. Why are you really in Columbus? She asked. He looked at her. That's direct. I'm a paralegal. I read documents for a living. Your file doesn't fully add up. Something shifted in his expression. Not defensiveness. Something closer to respect, arriving unexpectedly. Something was taken from my family, he said. I want it back. Something. A document. What kind of document? The kind that shouldn't exist outside of one room. And does. Nyla sat with that for a moment. The food arrived. She picked up her spoon. That sounds dangerous, she said. It is. And you came to a law firm. I came to handle it correctly. First, the word first sat between them on the table like something with weight. She ate her soup. It was genuinely excellent. She was annoyed at how excellent it was because it made him right about something, and she wasn't ready to hand that over yet. Good? He asked. It's fine, she said. He looked at her. He knew. She knew he knew. Neither of them said anything about it. They walked back to the office in the kind of silence that isn't empty, the kind that has already said something and is just letting it settle. At the door, she stopped. "Thank you for lunch. You paid for your own, I know. I'm still thanking you." He held the door open. She walked through. He followed. And for just a moment, standing in the doorway of a law firm in Columbus, Ohio, Sojun looked like a man who had found something he hadn't planned for and was now very carefully deciding what to do about it. Larry called on a Friday. Nyla was in the middle of reviewing a contract, red pen in hand, coffee going cold beside her, when her phone lit up on the desk. She looked at the screen, looked back at the contract, looked at the screen again. She let it ring. It rang out, then immediately rang again. She picked it up, declined it, and put it face down. 30 seconds later, a text arrived. "Hey, just checking in. How are you doing?" She stared at it. 6 weeks of silence, and now he was checking in. Larry, who once forgot she had a work presentation and scheduled a boys' trip the same weekend. Larry, who said, "I feel like I can breathe" in front of a lawyer and a fake plant and a man who was too embarrassed for him to make eye contact. She put the phone back down. 2 minutes later, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I feel like we moved too fast." Then, "Nyla, I think I still have feelings for you." She picked up the phone, screenshot, sent it to Diamond with no caption. Diamond responded in 4 seconds with a voice note. Nyla could hear her breathing before she even started talking. This man, Diamond said, very slowly, recorded a podcast episode last Tuesday called Knowing Your Worth, and now he's texting you about feelings? Nyla, do not respond. I will respond. Give me the phone. You don't have the phone. Spiritually, I have the phone. Do not text him back. Nyla put the phone in her drawer. I closed it. Went back to the contract. She did not text him back. Sojun came in that same afternoon, no scheduled appointment. He walked in at 3 p.m., nodded at Nyla, and said he needed to leave something for Gerald. She pointed down the hall. He went. He came back 4 minutes later and stopped at her desk instead of leaving. She looked up. "You look tired," he said. "That's a bold thing to say to someone. I didn't say it looked bad. I said you look tired. There's a difference." She sat back in her chair and looked at him properly. He was watching her the way he always did, that steady, unhurried attention that she had stopped pretending not to notice. "Long day," she said. "Is it work or something else?" She considered not answering. "Then my ex-husband decided he has feelings for me. 6 weeks after signing the divorce papers with a smile that I will personally never forgive." Something moved across Sojun's face, brief and controlled. He pulled the chair from beside her desk, turned it around, and sat down like he had been invited to, which he had not been. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing." "Good. I wasn't asking for your opinion." "I know." He said it without any apology and without any arrogance. Just a fact. "What do you want to do tonight?" She blinked. "Excuse me? You're not going to sit here and think about him. So what do you want to do?" She stared at him. He stared back. Outside the window, Columbus was doing what Columbus did in the early evening. Golden light cutting low across the buildings, the street starting to shift from day to night. Her office felt smaller than usual. Or maybe he just took up more space than most people without moving at all. "I want food," she said finally. "Real food. Real food. Not desk food." "Okay, I'm not dressed anywhere nice." He looked at her, actually looked, the kind that stared at her face and took its time, and said, "You're fine," in a tone that meant considerably more than the words. She felt that in her chest. She picked up her bag anyway. He took her to a Korean barbecue place on the east side that didn't look like much from the outside and was extraordinary on the inside, warm and loud and smelling of charcoal and sesame and something sweet underneath everything. They sat at a table with a grill built into the center. He ordered. She watched him do it. Quiet, certain, no performance. And noticed that he ordered things she had mentioned liking offhandedly during their lunch 2 days ago. Mentioned once. In passing. He had kept it. She didn't say anything about it. But she noticed. He started the grill himself without waiting to be shown, placed the meat carefully, adjusted the heat, then leaned back and looked at her across the low flame between them. "Tell me something," he said. "What kind of something? Anything you haven't told anyone in a while." She looked at the fire for a moment, small and steady between them. "I haven't felt like myself in about 3 years," she said. "I kept waiting to feel it come back, and it didn't. I just got used to the quieter version. He didn't rush to respond, didn't fill the space with reassurance or deflection. He just let it sit there, her words, and gave them the room they deserved. What did the full version feel like, he asked. Loud, she said. Funny, like I took up the right amount of space. You take up the right amount of space. You don't know the full version. No, he said. But I'd like to. The fire crackled between them. She turned the meat because it needed turning, and because she needed something to do with her hands. He watched her do it without offering to take over, which she appreciated more than she expected to. They ate slowly. Talk the way people talk when they're not trying to impress each other anymore. Real things, small things. The kind of conversation that builds without announcing itself. He told her about growing up in a house where silence was the language everyone spoke and nobody translated. She told him about Dayton, about her mother who worked double shifts and still made dinner every night and somehow made it look like a choice she was happy about. She sounds strong, he said. She was the strongest person I've ever known. Still is. You got it from her. Nyla looked at him. You don't know that either. I know what I see. She held his gaze for a moment. Then I looked away first, not because she wanted to, because something in his eyes was very direct and very warm at the same time, and she wasn't ready for both at once. After they ate, he walked her to her car. The street was quiet. The evening had cooled, and the air had that particular quality of a city settling into itself for the night. At her car, she turned around, and he was closer than she expected. Not inappropriate, just close. Close enough that she could see the detail of him. The line of his jaw, the way he looked at her without looking away, the particular stillness of a man who was not nervous but was very, very aware. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me. Why not? Because I didn't do it to be thanked. She searched his face. Then why did you do it? He reached out and very slowly, very deliberately, moved a fold of her jacket collar that had turned inward, straightening it with 2 fingers. A small thing, barely anything. His hand didn't linger. But the touch, brief and careful and completely intentional, landed somewhere deep and stayed there. Because you needed a good evening, he said quietly, and I wanted to be the one who gave it to you. She stood very still. He stepped back. Drive safe, Nyla. He walked away. She watched him go. She got into her car and sat in complete silence for a full minute. Then she called Diamond. Talk, Diamond said immediately. He fixed my collar. Silence. He was. My jacket collar was folded in and he just reached over and fixed it like it was the most natural thing. Nyla Diamond's voice was very serious now. That man is courting you. Don't be dramatic. I am being exact. That is a man who is paying attention to every single detail of you and making sure you feel it without overwhelming you. Nyla, that is intentional. That is a man with a plan. Nyla stared through her windshield. He's a client, she said. He is in a situation, Diamond said. And you need to decide how you feel about that before he decides for you. Nyla drove home. She thought about the collar the entire way. The note appeared on a Monday. Nyla got home at 6:43 p.m., keys in hand, bag on her shoulder, thinking about nothing more dangerous than what she was going to eat for dinner. She reached her door. The handle turned before the key went in. She stopped. She never left her door unlocked. Not once. It was the kind of habit her mother had drilled into her from childhood. Lock your door, lock your car, lock anything worth protecting. She stood in the hallway for a moment, completely still, running back through her morning. Keys in hand. The door was closed. Lock turned. She remembered the sound of it. She pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was exactly as she left it. Nothing moved, nothing missing, everything in its place. The throw blanket on the couch still folded the way she folded it. Her mug is still on the drying rack. Her books still stacked beside the chair in the order she stacked them. But on the kitchen counter, placed dead center like it had been measured, was a single folded piece of paper. She crossed the room, opened it. 4 words. Tell him to go home. She read it twice. Set it down. Picked it back up. Read it again like the words might rearrange themselves into something less alarming if she gave them enough time. They did not rearrange. She took a photo. Send it to Diamond. Typed. Please tell me I'm overreacting. Diamond called before the message had finished delivering. Pack a bag, Diamond, I am not playing with you right now. Pack. A bag. Nothing was taken. Nothing was touched. Someone was in your apartment, Nyla. Someone who knows where you live, knows how to get in, and knows enough about your life to leave that specific message. That is not nothing. That is a very organized thing, and I need you to pack a bag right now. Nyla looked around her apartment, same as always, completely familiar. And now, standing in the middle of it, feeling like a place that had been looked at by someone who had no right to look. She packed a bag. She was at Diamond's by 8 p.m., sitting at the kitchen table with tea she wasn't drinking, the photo of the note open on her phone in front of her. Diamond sat across from her, uncharacteristically quiet, which was the most alarming thing that had happened all evening. Say what you're thinking, Nyla said. I'm thinking that note wasn't for you. It was in my apartment. It was left for you to deliver. There's a difference. Diamond tapped the table once. Someone wants Sojun gone, and they've decided the fastest way to send that message is through you. Nyla sat with that, which means Diamond continued carefully that someone has been watching him, watching where he goes, watching who he spends time with. She paused. Watching you. The tea had gone completely cold. Nyla wrapped both hands around the mug anyway. I need to tell him, she said. Yes, he's not going to take it well. No, Diamond agreed. He is not. She didn't have to find a way to tell him. He called at 10:17 p.m. She stared at his name on her screen for 2 full rings, then answered. Are you home? His voice was different. Still low, still controlled, but underneath it something tighter, something that hadn't been there before. I'm at my friend's place. A short silence. Good. You already know. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer it like one either. I have people watching the building, not watching you, watching for something else. One of them saw someone come out of your floor who didn't belong there. And you're just telling me this now. I'm telling you the moment I confirmed it. She pressed her fingers against her eyes. Sojun? I know. That is my home. I know, Nyla. The way he said her name at that moment was different from every other time. Quieter. Like he was handling something carefully because he understood its value. I'm sorry. I should have had someone on your floor sooner. That's on me. The apology was direct and without decoration, and it landed exactly because of that. What do you want me to do? She asked. Nothing tonight. Stay where you are. I'll come to you in the morning. You don't have to. I'll come to you in the morning. He repeated. Not louder. Just certain. She exhaled. Okay, lock the door. I'm not at my apartment. Oh, lock whatever door you're behind. She almost said something sharp. Instead, she said, Good night, Sojun. Good night. He stayed on the line for 2 seconds longer than necessary. Then he hung up. Diamond was watching her from across the table with an expression that had a lot of opinions in it. Not one word, Nyla said. I wasn't going to say anything. Diamond. I'm just sitting here. You're sitting here loudly. Diamond picked up her mug. All I will say is that man called you at 10 p.m. to make sure you were safe and told you he was coming in the morning and stayed on the phone longer than he needed to. She sipped her tea. That's all I'll say. Nyla said nothing. Diamond said nothing. Then he stayed on the line. I know, Diamond said quietly. I know he did. He arrived at Diamond's building at 8 a.m. Nyla came downstairs alone. She had told Diamond to stay upstairs, and Diamond had agreed and was absolutely watching from the window. Nyla did not look up to confirm this because she already knew. He was standing beside a black car, coat on, hands in his pockets. When he saw her come through the door, something in his posture shifted. Not obviously, not dramatically. Just a small release of tension, like a breath let out slowly. Like he had been waiting to see with his own eyes that she was fine. She walked up to him. You didn't have to come. I wanted to see you. Simple. No dressing it up. She had noticed he never dressed things up. I want to go back to my apartment, she said. I know. Today. We'll go today. Are you going to tell me what's actually going on? The full version. He looked at her for a moment. The morning was cool and quiet around them, the street not yet fully awake. Yes, he said, but not here. He opened the car door. She looked at it, looked at him. If this is you being controlling, she said, I need you to know up front that it won't work on me. I know that too. I'm just making sure. Nyla. He held the door open. Get in the car. She got in the car. From the 3rd floor window, Diamond watched the black car pull away from the curb and said, out loud to nobody, Lord, please let her enjoy this. They sat in a coffee shop 4 blocks from Nyla's apartment. Corner table, backs to the wall, his choice, she noticed, done automatically, the way people do things they've done so long they've stopped thinking about them. He ordered for both of them without asking again. She decided she would tell him about that habit eventually. Not today. He wrapped both hands around his cup and looked at her across the table. Someone inside my network took a document, he said. Not a business document. A personal one. Names, dates, transactions going back 15 years. In the right hands, it's leverage. In the wrong hands, it's a weapon. And you came to Columbus because because the person who took it is here. Someone I trusted. Someone who has been inside my family's operations for a long time. He paused. A traitor is more dangerous than an enemy you can see coming. Nyla held her cup, and this person left that note in my apartment to slow me down by threatening me, by threatening what they think matters to me. He said it plainly, without flinching, and the implication of it sat between them open and honest, and neither of them looked away from it. She was what mattered to him. He had just said so directly, without saying it at all. That puts me in danger, she said. Yes, you're not going to pretend otherwise. No. She appreciated that more than she could explain. Larry had spent 6 years softening every uncomfortable truth until it had no edges left and therefore no meaning. This man sat across from her in a coffee shop and told her she was in danger because of him and looked her in the eye the entire time. What happens now? She asked. He reached across the table. Not for her hand. He stopped just short of it, his fingers resting on the table close enough that the warmth of them was real. An offer, not a demand. Now I will fix it, he said, and I make sure nothing gets close to you while I do. She looked at his hand, at his face, at the particular way he was watching her, like she was the most important thing in the room, and he had fully accepted that about himself. She turned her hand over on the table. He placed it over it. Slowly. Like he understood the weight of what she was giving him and intended to be careful with it. They stayed like that for a long moment. The coffee shop moved around them, quiet and ordinary, completely unaware. You should have told me sooner, she said. Yes, he said. I should have. Outside, Columbus was waking up. Inside, two people sat at a corner table with their hands together, and the full, complicated truth of things laid out between them, and neither of them moved to take it back. Larry was parked outside her apartment building. Nyla saw the car before she saw him. That same dusty gray Honda he had driven for 3 years and refused to trade in because he was waiting for the right time. Larry was always waiting for the right time. The right time to fix the bathroom faucet, the right time to plan a vacation, the right time to be a husband. The right time never came because Larry spent it all waiting for it. She and Sojun pulled up in the black car. The moment Nyla stepped out, she heard the Honda door open. Nyla. She stopped, closed her eyes for exactly 1 second, opened them. Larry looked the same. That was somehow annoying. She had half expected him to look diminished, smaller, somehow reduced by everything that had happened. He didn't. He was in a new jacket she didn't recognize, which meant he had gone shopping, which meant he was trying, which was the most effort he had shown in the last 2 years of their marriage, and he was spending it in a parking lot. I've been calling, he said. I know. You haven't been answering. I know that too. He looked past her, looked at Sojun, who had come around the car and was now standing slightly behind her left shoulder, not in front, not beside, but behind. Present. Positioned. The kind of stance that said nothing out loud and everything in practice. Larry's jaw tightened. Who is this? Nobody you need to worry about, Nyla said. Nyla Larry, her voice was even. Not cold, not heated, just completely flat in the way that meant she had already decided how this conversation was going to end. You signed those papers 6 weeks ago. You smiled. I watched you smile. I sat across that table and watched you smile like you had just finished a race you'd been running for years. So whatever you came here to say, whatever reflection you've been doing, I need you to understand that it's too late. Not because I'm angry, because I'm done. Larry looked at her, then at Sojun again. So what? You're with him now? That is not your question to ask. I'm just trying to understand. There is nothing to understand. She picked up her bag. Go home, Larry. She walked toward the building entrance without looking back. Sojun held the door open for her. Before he followed her in, he looked at Larry once. No words, no expression. Just a look that lasted 3 seconds and communicated something that made Larry take a very small, very instinctive step backward. Then Sojun walked inside and the door closed. Larry stood in the parking lot alone. He stood there for a while. Upstairs, Nyla dropped her bag on the couch and stood in the middle of her apartment. Someone had been here yesterday. She knew it, felt it, that particular unease of a space that has been entered without permission. She moved through the room slowly, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, checking everything, resetting the feeling of the place back to hers. Sojun stayed near the door. He didn't follow her through the rooms. He understood without being told that she needed to do it herself, that walking her own space was something she had to reclaim on her own terms. He just stayed close enough that she knew he was there. She came back to the living room. "It's fine," she said. "Everything's where it should be. I had someone come through this morning before we got here." She looked at him. "You had someone check my apartment?" "Yes, without telling me." "I'm telling you now." She pressed her lips together, looked at the ceiling, looked back at him. "Sojun, I need you to understand something. I spent 6 years with a man who made decisions about my life without consulting me and dressed it up as taking care of me. I cannot do that again. I will not." He didn't move, didn't deflect. That's fair. "So if you're going to be in my life in any capacity, I am." The certainty of it stopped her mid-sentence. "I am," he said again, quieter. "And I hear you. I'll tell you before, not after." She studied his face. There was no qualification in it, no performance of agreeability. He meant it the way he meant everything, completely, without decoration. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he repeated. The apartment settled around them. Outside the window, Columbus moved along at its usual pace, indifferent and ordinary. In here, everything felt slightly altered, like a room after furniture has been rearranged. Same space, different weight. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I could eat. I cook when I'm stressed. Fair warning, there will be a lot of food." "That's not a warning," he said. "That's good news." She made rice because it was what her hands knew when her brain was too full for decisions. The smell filled the apartment within 20 minutes, deep and warm, tomato and spice, and something that her mother had added to the recipe that Nyla had never fully identified and had stopped trying to. Sojun sat at the kitchen counter and watched her cook. Not the way people watch when they're just occupying space. He watched the way he did everything, with full attention, like whatever was in front of him deserved it. He asked questions. "What is that spice? Why that order?" She answered without thinking, explaining the process the way she had learned it, her mother's voice underneath her own words. At some point she looked up and he was leaning forward on the counter, chin resting on his hand, watching her with an expression so unguarded she almost didn't recognize it on him. Open, warm. The careful exterior is still there, but worn loosely like a jacket he'd half taken off. "What?" she said. "Nothing. You're staring." "I'm watching," he said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Staring is when you're not thinking about anything. Watching is when you can't stop." She turned back to the stove. She stirred something that did not need stirring. "You can't just say things like that," she said to the pot. "Why not? Because it's a lot. Is it too much?" She considered the question seriously, the way he always seemed to intend his questions to be considered. "No," she said finally, "it's not too much." He said nothing, but when she glanced back, he was still watching. And this time, she didn't tell him to stop. They ate at her small dining table with the window open, the evening coming in cool and unhurried. He ate the way she had started to notice he did everything, with full presence, no distraction, like the meal deserved his attention, and so did she. Halfway through, he put his fork down and looked at her. "Tell me about it before," he said. "Before what?" "Before you got quiet." She looked at him across the table. The question was so specific it almost hurt. The fact that he had identified it, named it, the quietness she had worn so long she had almost mistaken it for her personality. "I used to be the loudest person in any room," she said. "Not obnoxiously loud, just fully there. I took up space without apologizing for it. I made people laugh. I had opinions about everything and said them. What happened? Someone kept asking me to turn it down, not directly. Just reactions, sighs. That look people give when you're a little too much for them." She pushed rice around her plate. "Eventually, you just learn to turn yourself down before anyone has to ask." Sojun was quiet for a moment. "I want the loud version," he said. She looked up. I want the one that takes up space, he said. The one with the opinions. I want all of it, Nyla. Not the version that's been edited down for someone else's comfort. She held his gaze across the table. The evening light was low and warm between them. Her apartment smelled like her mother's cooking and something else underneath it. Something new. Something that hadn't been here before tonight. You don't know what you're asking for, she said softly. Yes, I do, he said. That's why I'm asking. She reached across the table, found his hand. He turned it over and held hers the way he had in the coffee shop, careful, certain, like something he fully intended to keep. Outside, somewhere in Columbus, Larry was probably recording a podcast. Nobody was listening. Here, for the first time in 3 years, Nyla Barnes felt like someone was listening to every single part of her. She decided to let him. The traitor had a name. Sojun found out on a Wednesday morning, and Nyla knew something was wrong before he said a single word because he arrived at the firm without a scheduled appointment, walked past Gerald's office without stopping, and came directly to her desk with the particular stillness of a man who was holding something very heavy, very carefully. She looked up. His face was composed. It was always composed. But she had spent enough time studying it to know the difference between composed and controlled, and right now he was controlling something. Something large. Close time, he said. She looked at the clock. 11:40. I have 20 minutes. That's enough. They went to the small park 2 blocks from the office. Cold for October, the trees doing what Ohio trees did in fall, dropping everything at once, dramatically, like they had been holding it all summer, and finally gave up. They sat on a bench, and he looked at the ground for a moment before he spoke. His name is Park Tae-young, he said. He's been with my family for 11 years, managed logistics on the east side of the operation. I trusted him completely. And he took the document. He sold it to a man named Victor Ree, a competitor who has been trying to dismantle my family's operation for 4 years through every channel available to him, legal, illegal, and everything in between. He paused. Victor is the one who had someone enter your apartment. Nyla sat with that. To warn you off, to tell me I have something to lose now. He said it plainly, the way he always said difficult things, directly, without softening the edges. He's not wrong. The wind moved through the trees above them. A leaf came down between them and landed on the bench, and neither of them moved it. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to get the document back. And I'm going to make sure Victor Ree understands that using people I care about as leverage is the last mistake he ever makes professionally. Professionally, she repeated. I handle things correctly. First, she remembered him saying that word, first, across a restaurant table weeks ago. She understood it better now. And Tae-yang? Something moved across his face, brief and complicated. That one is harder, he said quietly. 11 years. I gave him access because I trusted him. You can be angry at a betrayal and still grieve the relationship at the same time. She looked at him. That was the most unguarded thing he had ever said. It arrived without ceremony, without him seeming to notice he'd said it, which meant it was simply true. Something he had been carrying that had found its way out in the cold air of a park in Columbus, Ohio, next to a woman he hadn't planned for. I know that feeling, she said. He looked at her. 6 years, she said. You can be done with someone and still feel the loss of what you thought it was. They sat in that for a moment together. Not performing understanding. Actually in it, side by side. 2 people who had both trusted the wrong person and were both still carrying the particular weight of that. His hand found hers on the bench. Slow. Deliberate. His thumb moved once across her knuckles, one small motion, back and forth, that said everything he wasn't saying out loud. She turned her hand over and held his properly. They sat like that until her 20 minutes were up. Diamond called that evening with news. Larry, she said, in the tone she reserved for announcing disasters, has been talking. Nyla was on her couch, feet tucked under her, phone against her ear. Talking to who? His boys. Deshaun specifically, who told Marcus from the gym, who apparently knows somebody who runs in the same circles as people who work adjacent to, and I need you to stay calm. Victor Ree. Nyla sat up slowly. Diamond. I know. Are you telling me that Larry... I'm telling you that Larry has been running his mouth about you and Sojun to anyone who will listen, which is how your business ended up in the wrong ears, which is possibly how Victor Ree knew exactly which woman to put a note in front of. The apartment was very quiet. Larry, Nyla said, almost got me hurt. Indirectly. Accidentally. Because he cannot keep his mouth closed about things that are not his business anymore. He put me in danger because he was gossiping. Nyla, I have been telling you since 2019 that man was a liability. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the street below, Columbus moving along quietly, completely unaware of what was happening inside her chest right now, something hot and clear and extremely focused. I have to tell Sojun, she said. Yes, you do. Tonight. Yes. She hung up, called Sojun. He answered on the first ring. I need to see you, she said. A pause. Not hesitation. Assessment. Are you safe? Right now, yes. I'll come to you. He arrived in 20 minutes. She opened the door and he stepped inside and looked at her face and said nothing, just waited, because he had learned by now that she came to things in her own time, and rushing her was like trying to redirect a river, pointless and presumptuous. She told him everything. Diamond's call. Larry. Deshawn. The chain of careless words that had traveled from a parking lot conversation all the way to Victor Ree's ear. Sojun stood in her living room and listened without interrupting. His face stayed even throughout. By the end of it, that particular stillness had returned. The controlled kind. The kind that meant something large was being held carefully. He didn't mean to, she said. Larry. He didn't do it intentionally. I know. He's an idiot. Not a criminal. I know that too. He looked at her. Are you defending him? No, she said. I'm just being accurate. There's a difference. Something released in his expression. Almost a smile. There is. She crossed her arms. What happens now? He moved toward her, then, not fast, not dramatically, just closed the distance between them in the quiet, deliberate way he did everything. He stopped close enough that she had to look up slightly to hold his gaze. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool apartment air. He reached up and cupped her face in both hands. Gently, like she was something that required care. His thumbs rested against her cheekbones, and he looked at her, really looked, the kind that went past the surface and found what was underneath and said, now I will end this, and you stop being in the middle of it. I'm already in the middle of it, not for much longer. She placed her hands over his, felt the steadiness of them, the warmth, the intention in every point of contact. You can't promise that. Watch me, he said quietly. She searched his face, found nothing uncertain in it. Not bravado, something quieter and more absolute than that. The kind of certainty that comes from a man who has decided something and has never once gone back on a decision. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his chest. He wrapped both arms around her, fully. One hand at her back, one at the back of her head, holding her the way you hold something you have decided belongs to you, not possessively, not tightly, just completely. Like she fit there and he had known it for a while and was simply finally saying so with his body instead of his words. She closed her eyes. Outside, Columbus carried on. Somewhere across the city, Victor Ree was making plans. Somewhere Larry was probably opening his mouth about something that wasn't his business. Here, Nyla Barnes stood in her own living room, held by a man who had walked into her life through a law firm on a Tuesday and dismantled every quiet assumption she had made about what she deserved. She stayed exactly where she was. Victor Ree made his next move on a Thursday evening. Nyla was leaving the office at 6 p.m. when a black SUV pulled up alongside her on the sidewalk and two men stepped out. Not aggressive, not yet. Controlled, professional. The kind of men who had done this before and knew that the loudest version of a threat is always the quiet one. The one on the left said, Miss Barnes. She stopped walking, her keys were in her hand, her phone was in her bag. She ran the calculation quickly, scream, run, neither, both, and landed on completely still because something in her said that moving fast right now would be the wrong decision. Mr. Ree would like to speak with you, he said. I don't know Mr. Ree, she said. He knows you. She looked at the SUV, tinted windows, engine running. Whoever was inside had the patience of someone who already knew how this ended. I have places to be, she said. Miss Barnes, his voice didn't change. That was the part that was frightening. This is the polite version of the conversation. Mr. Ree would prefer to keep it that way. She stood on a sidewalk in Columbus, Ohio at 6 p.m. with people walking past her on both sides, completely unaware, and understood clearly that she had two options: get in the car willingly or get in the car unwillingly. She got in the car. Victor Ree was smaller than she expected. That was the first thing. She had built a picture in her mind: large, imposing, the physical embodiment of a threat. The man sitting across from her in the back of the SUV was compact, neat, mid-50s, with the careful appearance of someone who had spent decades making sure nothing about him was memorable. Average height, average face. The kind of man you would walk past in a grocery store and not once look back at, which was, she understood immediately, entirely the point. "Ms. Barnes," he said, "thank you for joining me. I didn't have a lot of choices. You always have a choice." He smiled. It didn't reach anything. I simply made one option more convenient than the other. She held her bag on her lap and kept her face neutral. She was good at neutral. She had been practicing it for years. "What do you want?" she asked. "The same thing I've always wanted. For Sojun to leave Columbus and take his family's business with him." He folded his hands. "I understand you have some influence over his movements. You misunderstand the situation. I don't think I do." He looked at her with the mild, patient expression of a man who was certain he was the smartest person in every room he entered. "He came here for a document. He stayed for you. That's not business. That's personal. And personal leverage. If you touch me, I have no interest in touching you, Miss Barnes." He said it like the idea was beneath him. "I'm a businessman. I solve problems efficiently. You are not a problem. You are a solution. Tell him to leave. Tell him whatever he came here for isn't worth the cost." And all of this, he gestured vaguely at the air between them, "goes away. You go back to your life. He goes back to his." She looked at this small, neat, utterly dangerous man and felt something settle inside her. Not calm exactly. Something colder than calm. "And if I don't," he tilted his head slightly, "then the people he cares about become the message." The SUV stopped. She hadn't noticed it moving. The door opened. The man on the left stood outside waiting. "Think about it," Ree said pleasantly. "You seem like a practical woman." She got out of the car, stood on the sidewalk. The SUV pulled away smoothly and disappeared into traffic like it had never been there at all. She stood very still for 10 seconds. Then she called Sojun. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" "Outside the office." Her voice was steady. She was surprised by how steady it was. "Victor Ree just had me picked up. I'm fine." He talked, I listened, they dropped me back. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds. "Don't move," he said. "I'm coming." Sojun, Nyla, his voice had dropped to something she hadn't heard before. Low and absolute, all the warmth still there underneath, but compressed now, hardened around the edges by something that had nothing to do with her, everything to do with what he was going to do next. "Don't move." She didn't move. He arrived in 8 minutes. She knew he had been close. She didn't ask where. He stepped out of the car and crossed the sidewalk to her and stopped directly in front of her and looked at her face the way a person checks something precious for damage. Careful, thorough, his jaw tight. "He didn't touch you." "No." "He threatened you." "Technically, he threatened the people around me." He was very precise about the wording. Something moved through his eyes, fast and dark, and then gone. He reached out and took her face in both hands, the same way he had in her apartment, gentle and certain, and looked at her for a long moment without speaking. Then he pulled her in. Not rushed, not desperate. He brought her into him slowly, one arm around her back, his other hand moving from her face to the back of her head, and held her against his chest with the quiet totality of a man who had made a decision and was done pretending he hadn't. She felt his heartbeat under her ear, faster than his exterior suggested. He was not as composed as he looked. She had unsettled him in a way that Victor Ree and stolen documents and 11-year betrayals had not, and she understood that clearly and held on to it. "I'm okay," she said into his chest. "I know," he said. His voice was rough at the edges. "I know you are. You're the one who looks shaken. I am shaken." He said it without any embarrassment. "Someone put their hands on my time to get to me. That will not happen again. I'm not your property, Sojun." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "No," he said, "you're not. You're something I care about." Considerably more than property. She searched his face. He let her search for it. He had stopped hiding things from her sometime in the last few weeks, and she wasn't sure exactly when it had happened, but it was complete now. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Tonight I'm going to take you somewhere safe. I told you I'm not leaving my apartment." "I know." He looked at her. "So I'm staying in it." She blinked. "Excuse me? Until this is over, I'm not leaving you alone at night. You can argue about it or you can accept it. Those aren't the only two options. They are tonight." She stared at him. He stared back. Neither of them moved. "You are the most stubborn man," she said. "I've been told. You'll sleep on the couch, whatever you need, and you'll tell me everything tomorrow, the full plan, every detail." "Yes, I'm serious, Sojun. I know you are. That's why I said yes." She exhaled, looked at the street, looked back at him. "I need to call Diamond. Call her in the car. You're very bossy. You keep saying that like it's working." She got in the car. Diamond answered before the first ring finished. "Nyla, where have you been? I have been calling you for 4. I got picked up by Victor Ree." The silence was so complete. Nyla checked if the call had dropped. Diamond. "I'm here," Diamond said, very quietly. "I'm just deciding whether to pass out or get in my car. I'm fine. I'm with Sojun. He's with you right now?" "He's driving." Another silence. Then Diamond said, with great seriousness, "Tell him thank you from me. I'm not telling him that." "Tell him," Diamond said, "thank you, and also that she has been rooting for him since the parking lot incident, and she is not ashamed." Diamond. "I'm just being honest." Nyla looked at Sojun. He was watching the road, jaw still tight, one hand on the wheel. The city moved past the windows around them, ordinary and indifferent. She reached over and put her hand on his. He turned his palm over immediately. Held on. "Tell Diamond she's welcome," he said quietly, without looking away from the road. Nyla blinked. "You could hear her? She's loud." "Tell him I said he's welcome too," Diamond shouted from the phone. Nyla closed her eyes. "I'm hanging up now, Diamond. Give him my number in case of emergency." She hung up. Sojun's expression shifted, just slightly. The tightness in his jaw eased by one fraction, and the corner of his mouth moved in a way that wasn't quite a smile, but was everything adjacent to one. "She's something," he said. "She's a lot," Nyla said, "but she's mine." He squeezed her hand once. "I know the feeling," he said. She looked at him. He kept his eyes on the road and said nothing else. He didn't need to. It ended on a Friday. Sojun didn't tell her how. He told her it was done, and she accepted that because she had learned by now where his lines were, and this was one of them. Not because he was hiding things from her, but because there were parts of his world he carried alone and always would. And she respected that the way you respect a door that isn't yours to open. What he did tell her was this. The document was back. Park Tae-yang was gone from his organization permanently, and Victor Ree had delivered a message so clear and so complete that Columbus would be the last city he ever used as a chessboard. He told her all of this standing in her kitchen on a Friday morning while she made coffee, his coat still on, like he had come straight from whatever had happened and needed to see her before he did anything else. She handed him a cup. He took it, looked at her over the rim. "It's over." "I know," she said. "You look tired." "I am." "Sit down then." He sat. She leaned against the counter across from him and watched him the way he was always watching her, with full attention, finding the details, keeping them. He looked different this morning, not diminished, lighter, like something he had been carrying for a long time had finally been put down and his body was still adjusting to the absence of the weight. "What happens now?" she asked. "With you, with Columbus." He set the cup down. "I'm going back to New York. There are things that need my attention there." The kitchen was very quiet. "Okay," she said. "Nyla, I'm not doing that thing where I make it difficult. I know you're not." He stood up, crossed the kitchen, stopped in front of her. "I'm coming back. You don't have to say that. I'm saying it because it's true." He reached out and tucked one finger under her chin, tilting her face up toward his. "I found something here I didn't come looking for. I don't leave things like that behind." She looked up at him. "I'm not a thing." "No," he said softly. "You're everything. That's the point." She felt that move through her from the top of her chest all the way down. She placed both hands flat against his chest and felt his heartbeat under her palms. Steady, present, real. He lowered his head and kissed her. Not rushed, not urgent. The kind of kiss that has patience in it because it knows it isn't the last one. Slow and warm and completely deliberate, his hand cradling her face like she was something he had decided to be careful with from the very beginning. She kissed him back with everything she had stopped letting herself feel for 3 years. When they separated, rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, just breathing. 2 weeks, he said quietly. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be here, she said. Larry posted a new podcast episode that same Friday. The title was Moving On with Grace and Maturity. It got 4 listens. One was his mother. She texted Nyla immediately after. Baby, I listened to it so you don't have to. You are well out of it. Enjoy your life. Nyla sent back a laughing emoji and meant it completely. Full face, full chest. The kind of laugh she had locked away for 3 years finally finding its way back out. Diamond called 30 seconds later. He's gone for 2 weeks. And he's coming back. Diamond exhaled like she had been holding it since Tuesday. Nyla Barnes, she said, I have never been so happy to be right about something in my entire life. Don't, Nyla said. I told you, from the parking lot. I told you. Diamond, I told you. Nyla laughed again, stood at her kitchen window looking out at Columbus. Ordinary, unhurried, completely unaware of everything that had happened inside one apartment building over the last several weeks. She felt like herself, not the edited version, not the quiet version, not the woman who had learned to take up less space so someone else could be comfortable. The full version, loud, present, taking up exactly the right amount of space. She had missed her. Welcome back. Welcome home.